Before the clink of metal filled purses and pockets, life in the low-lying lands of the Netherlands was a very different affair. Imagine a time, thousands of years ago, when the marshy river deltas were home to small, scattered communities. If you wanted something from your neighbor, say a sturdy pot for cooking, you couldn't just hand over a few shiny coins. Money, as we know it, simply didn't exist. Instead, people relied on a system we call barter. You would trade something you had for something you needed. A well-made axe head might be worth a few bushels of grain, or a warm animal hide could be exchanged for a set of sharp flint tools. It was a direct, person-to-person economy built on trust and mutual need. This system, while simple, had its complications. What if the potter didn't need your grain? What if your prize pig was worth far more than the single basket you wanted? To solve these problems, early societies developed what we might call proto-money. These were items that everyone agreed had a certain value, making trade a little bit easier. In the Netherlands and across ancient Europe, things like salt, a vital preservative, cattle, or specific types of seashells were used as a common medium of exchange. You could trade your goods for these items, and then use those items to buy what you truly wanted from someone else. It was a crucial step on the long road towards a monetary system. As societies grew more complex, especially with the dawn of the Bronze Age, metal became increasingly important. But still, there were no coins. Instead, people used metal by weight. Archaeologists have found hoards of bronze rings, axe heads, and unmarked lumps of metal known as ingots. These weren't tools meant for chopping wood. They were standardized weights of valuable metal used purely for trade. A merchant might carry a set of scales to weigh out a precise amount of bronze or later silver to complete a transaction. This was a significant innovation, as metal was durable, divisible, and desired by almost everyone. It was the direct ancestor of the coin, a piece of metal whose value was guaranteed not by its use, but by its material. This pre-coinage world tells us so much about early Dutch life. It was a society based on agriculture, community, and the practical value of goods. Trade was not an abstract concept involving numbers on a screen. It was a tangible exchange of physical objects. The value of an item was tied directly to its usefulness, its rarity, or the effort it took to create it. This intricate dance of barter, commodity money, and weighted metal set the stage for a revolutionary idea that would arrive from the South, a small, round piece of stamped metal that would change the Dutch economy and the world forever. The first coins were about to make their grand entrance. The first real coins to jingle in the Netherlands didn't come from a king or a government mint in the region. They arrived in the hands of traders and warriors. Around the 3rd century BC, Celtic tribes, sometimes known as the Gauls, began to spread across Europe. They brought with them a fascinating and, for the time, radical invention: coinage. These early Celtic coins were often beautiful, abstract pieces of art. Instead of realistic portraits, they featured stylized horses, swirling patterns, and mysterious symbols. Many were struck from gold, a metal that held an almost mythical status, representing power, divinity, and wealth. The most famous of these were inspired by the gold staters of Philip II of Macedon, Alexander the Great's father. These Celtic coins weren't used for buying bread and milk in a village market. They were high-value items, prestige objects used for media group, reenactment of Celtic warriors receiving coins as payment, hands exchanging coins in a tribal setting as stock, distribute is equally, paying soldiers, sealing diplomatic alliances, or making grand offerings to the gods. Finding a Celtic gold coin, often called a regenboegschoteltje, or rainbow cup in Dutch folklore, because they were often found after heavy rain, was like discovering a treasure. Their curved, dish-like shape was distinctive. For the local tribes living in the Low Countries, who were still largely reliant on barter, seeing these shiny, uniform pieces of gold must have been astounding. It was a glimpse into a more organized, more powerful world. While gold coins were for the elite, the Celts also produced smaller coins from media group, Close-up of ancient Celtic silver coins. Display of different metal coins from Celtic period stock distribute an equally silver and a bronze-like alloy called potine. These were more practical and likely used for a wider range of transactions, perhaps for paying tolls or trading at larger regional fairs. In the Netherlands, particularly in the south, where Celtic influence was strongest, tribes like the Eburones began to adopt this new technology. They didn't just use coins from other tribes, they started to mint their own. These local versions were often cruder copies of the more sophisticated Gallic coins, but they represent a monumental step, the first coins ever to be produced on Dutch soil. The arrival of Celtic coinage marks a turning point in Dutch history. It introduced the very concept of money as a standardized, portable, and universally accepted token of value. It moved the economy, ever so slowly, away from the cumbersome system of bartering goods and weighing metal. The abstract designs on these coins also give us a peek into the Celtic soul, their art, their beliefs, and their connection to the natural world. These weren't just lumps of metal, they were symbols of a culture on the move, a culture that was laying the very first foundations of a monetary economy in the Netherlands. But this Celtic world was about to be shaken by an even greater power marching from the south. Just as Celtic coins were becoming familiar, a new and formidable power swept across Europe, the Roman Empire. When Roman legions marched north and established the Rhine River as their frontier in the 1st century BC, they didn't just bring soldiers and forts. They brought the full might of Roman organization, including its highly sophisticated monetary system. Suddenly, the abstract Celtic coins were overshadowed by a currency that was uniform, widespread, and backed by the authority of an emperor. The most important of these was the silver denarius, a coin that would become the backbone of the economy in the Roman-controlled parts of the Netherlands for centuries. The impact of Roman coins was immediate and profound. Unlike the high-value Celtic status, Roman currency came in a full range of denominations, from the gold aureus for large payments down to the bronze as for everyday purchases. This meant that for the first time, money could be used by everyone, for everything. A soldier could be paid his salary in denarii, a merchant could price his goods in sestertii, and a farmer could sell his produce at a local market for a handful of bronze coins. This created a true market economy, connecting the local Batavian and Cananefatian tribes to a vast, empire-wide network of trade. Roman coins have been found all over the Netherlands, even far beyond the Roman frontier, showing just how influential they were. The Romans were masters of propaganda, and their coins were miniature billboards for the empire. Each coin featured a portrait of the ruling emperor, a powerful reminder of who was in charge, even in a remote province like Germania Inferior. The reverse side often depicted military victories, gods and goddesses, or grand building projects, all designed to project an image of Roman power. After the Roman Empire crumbled in the 5th century, a period of chaos descended upon Europe. The grand, unified Roman monetary system collapsed, and for a time, society in the Netherlands reverted to a more localized, barter-based economy. But the memory of money had not been lost. Out of this so-called Dark Age, a new and distinctly local coinage began to emerge. The first truly Dutch coins were minted not by a king or an emperor, but by the enterprising seafaring traders of the north, the Frisians. From about the 7th century, they produced small, thick silver coins known as sciatus. These coins were a vital lubricant for the revived trade routes that stretched across the North Sea to England and Scandinavia. These Frisian sciatus are absolutely fascinating because they show a blend of influences. Some feature crude portraits, attempts to imitate old Roman or Byzantine coins. Others, however, are wonderfully original, decorated with strange spiky figures often called porcupines or abstract geometric patterns. The most common type features a simple, stylized head on one side and an intricate design of lines and dots on the other. They were not issued by a single ruler, but by various trading towns along the coast, most famously Dorestad, which was one of the most important commercial hubs in early medieval Europe. The sciata was a merchant's coin, practical and trusted by traders all around the North Sea. The era of the sciata came to an end with the rise of another great power, the Carolingian Empire under Charlemagne. In the late 8th century, Charlemagne conquered the Frisian lands and set about reforming the entire monetary system of his vast empire. He did away with the dozens of different local coin types and introduced a single standard coin, the silver denarius, or penny. This new coin was thinner and wider than the sciata, and was stamped with the name of the king and the mint where it was made. Charlemagne established official mints throughout his empire, including in key Dutch trading centers like Dorestad and Maastricht. This Carolingian reform was a huge step forward. For the first time since the Romans, the Netherlands was part of a large, unified currency zone. A penny minted in Maastricht was, in theory, identical in value to one minted in Paris or Rome. This standardization dramatically simplified trade and helped knit the sprawling empire together. The design was also clear and authoritative. One side typically had a simple cross, while the other carried the king's monogram. These Carolingian pennies, and the slightly varied versions made by his successors, would remain the dominant form of currency in the Netherlands for the next few centuries, laying the groundwork for the complex monetary world of the later Middle Ages. As the powerful Carolingian Empire began to fragment in the 10th and 11th centuries, so too did its unified coinage. Power didn't belong to a single king anymore. It splintered into the hands of a host of local rulers. In the Low Countries, this meant that various counts, dukes, and bishops gained the right to mint, the authority to produce their own coins. This marked the beginning of a long and incredibly complex period in Dutch monetary history. There was no single Dutch coin. Instead, the County of Holland minted its own pennies, the Duchy of Brabant had its own, and the Bishopric of Utrecht produced yet another version. It was, really, a true patchwork of currencies. Imagine being a merchant traveling from Amsterdam to Brussels. In your purse, you would need to carry several different types of coins, and you'd constantly have to worry about exchange rates. A penny from Holland might not be accepted at face value in Brabant, especially if the local duke had decided to debase his currency by adding less silver to it to make a quick profit. This made trade, well, complicated and risky. The coins themselves reflected this localism. Instead of an emperor's name, they now bore the name or symbols of the local count or bishop, such as the Lion of Holland or the Cross of Utrecht. Each coin was a tiny declaration of local independence and authority. To deal with this complexity, larger and more stable coins began to be introduced for regional and international trade. One of the most important was the groot, or groot, a larger silver coin worth several pennies. First appearing in the 13th century, the groot made it easier to handle larger sums of money. Alongside these, gold coins started to reappear for the first time in centuries, inspired by the florins of Florence and the ducats of Venice. Powerful rulers like the Counts of Holland and Flanders began minting their own gold coins, such as the Gouden Leeuw, or Golden Lion, to show off their wealth and facilitate big business transactions. This period of monetary fragmentation lasted for hundreds of years. while rulers of the Burgundian and later the Habsburg Netherlands made several attempts to standardize the coinage under their control, local traditions and privileges died hard. The provinces clung fiercely to their right to mint their own money, seeing it as a cornerstone of their autonomy. This deeply rooted habit of local control and suspicion of central authority would become a defining characteristic of Dutch culture and politics. It was a messy, inefficient system, but it perfectly mirrored the political reality of the Low Countries before they were forged into a single independent nation. The end of the 18th century brought revolutionary turmoil to Europe, and the Netherlands was caught right in the middle of it. The old Dutch Republic, weakened by political infighting and economic decline, was invaded by French revolutionary armies in 1795. The House of Orange fled, and a new state, the Batavian Republic, was established as a satellite of France. This political upheaval brought with it a radical overhaul of the country's ancient and complex monetary system. The French revolutionaries loved logic, standardization, and the decimal system, and they sought to impose this new order on the Dutch coinage. The Batavian Republic made the first serious attempt to create a truly national, unified, and decimalized currency. The old confusing system of guilders, stuivers, and pennings, where a stuiver was worth 8 duiten or 16 penningen, was to be swept away. The plan was to introduce a decimal guilder, divided into 100 cents. New coins were designed, bearing the symbols of the new republic. The Dutch maiden, holding a spear with a liberty cap, instead of the old provincial coats of arms. However, old habits died hard. The transition was slow and met with resistance, and many of the old familiar provincial coins remained in circulation alongside the new ones. The situation grew even more complicated when Napoleon Bonaparte decided to annex the Netherlands directly into the French Empire in 1810. Dutch autonomy vanished completely, and the French franc was declared the official currency. For a few years, French coins, bearing the profile of Emperor Napoleon, became legal tender in the Netherlands. The centuries-old guilder was officially abolished. This was a profound shock to the Dutch people. Their money, which had been a symbol of their independence and commercial might for centuries, was replaced by the currency of a foreign occupier. It was a clear and daily reminder of their loss of sovereignty. This French period, though relatively short, was a monetary watershed. It forcibly broke the old provincial minting traditions that had lingered for centuries. It introduced the revolutionary concept of a decimal system, an idea that, despite its foreign origins, was too logical to ignore. When Napoleon was finally defeated in 1813, and the Netherlands regained its independence, it did not simply go back to the old ways. The slate had been wiped clean. The Dutch were now free to build a new, modern, and truly national monetary system from the ground up, a system fit for a new kingdom. The French interlude, in its own disruptive way, paved the way for modern Dutch money. After the defeat of Napoleon in 1815, the Congress of Vienna created a new, powerful state to act as a buffer against France, the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, combining the old republic with the southern Netherlands, what is modern-day Belgium, under King William I. For the first time in its history, the Netherlands was a centralized monarchy with a single national government. And well, a modern kingdom needed modern national money. King William I seized the opportunity to finally achieve what had eluded rulers for centuries: a single, unified, and decimalized coinage for the entire country. Building on the ideas introduced during the French period, the Dutch Currency Act of 1816 officially established the decimal system. The guilder, or gulden, was confirmed as the standard unit, but it was now divided into 100 cents. The old stivers, daalders, and duiten were swept away for good. The law also centralized all minting operations. The dozens of old provincial mints were closed, and a single national mint, Rijksmunt, the royal mint, was established in Utrecht. From that point on, Every official Dutch coin would be struck in Utrecht, a tradition that continues to this day. This was the birth of the first truly national Dutch currency. The new coins proudly displayed the symbols of the new monarchy. The obverse of the silver guilders, half guilders, and quarter guilders, as well as the new gold 10 guilder coin, or gulden tientje, all featured the portrait of the reigning monarch, starting with King William I. The reverse side showed the new national coat of arms, crowned and held by two lions, with the value inscribed below. The smaller copper coins, the cent, half cent, and 2.5 cent piece, also bore the royal monogram. This consistent design across all denominations reinforced the idea of national unity under the House of Orange. This system proved to be incredibly stable and successful. When Belgium broke away in 1830, the Netherlands simply continued with the same currency system. The portraits on the coins changed as new monarchs ascended the throne: William II, William III, and then the beloved Queen Wilhelmina, whose long reign from 1890 to 1948 meant her profile became familiar to generations of Dutch citizens. The Dutch guilder became a symbol of reliability and national identity, a quiet, constant presence in the daily lives of the Dutch people for over 150 years, weathering economic crises and social change until the cataclysm of the Second World War brought a new and brutal challenge. The Second World War and the German occupation from 1940 to 1945 brought drastic changes to Dutch daily life, and this was reflected in the nation's pockets. The occupying forces needed metal for their war machine, so they began recalling all silver and bronze coins from circulation. In their place, the Germans issued new coins made from cheaper metals, primarily zinc. These occupation coins were stark and utilitarian. The familiar portrait of Queen Wilhelmina, a powerful symbol of Dutch independence, was removed. Instead, the zinc coins featured simple, non-political designs like a ship, a gull, or tulip branches, with the word Nederland, but no royal insignia. For the Dutch people, using this dull grey ersatz money was a daily reminder of their subjugation. Meanwhile, the Dutch government in exile, operating from London and the United States, made plans for the country's liberation. This included minting a new series of coins to be introduced as soon as the war was over. Using the facilities of the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia, they produced millions of guilders, quarters, and dimes, dated 1943, 1944, and 1945. These coins were stockpiled and brought to the Netherlands with the Allied forces. After liberation, the worthless zinc coins were withdrawn, and these new silver coins, once again bearing the portrait of Queen Wilhelmina, were put into circulation, serving as a tangible symbol of freedom and the restoration of the legitimate Dutch state. In the post-war decades, the Netherlands rebuilt and prospered. The coinage was updated with new portraits of Queen Juliana and then Queen Beatrix. However, a new dream was taking shape in Europe: the dream of closer economic and political integration to ensure lasting peace and prosperity. This led to the creation of the European Economic Community, the forerunner of the European Union. A key part of this project was the ambition to create a single European currency, which would simplify trade, travel, and investment among member states. After decades of planning and negotiation, this ambition became a reality with the Maastricht Treaty in 1992. The final chapter for the historic Dutch guilder began on January 1, 2002. On that day, 12 EU countries, including the Netherlands, officially replaced their national currencies with the euro. For a short transitional period, both guilders and euros were accepted, but soon the guilder was withdrawn forever. The last series of guilder coins, designed by the artist Tim van der Laan and featuring an abstract profile of Queen Beatrix, became collector's items. The new Dutch euro coins featured two designs: a simple silhouetted profile of Queen Beatrix for the first series, and later, an updated portrait of King Willem-Alexander after his accession in 2013. The switch to the euro marked the end of a monetary history stretching back over 2 millennia,
but it also symbolized the Netherlands' commitment to a new, shared European future.